Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Talos of Tech. We're live on Twitch once again. Dude, that's Aaron. Thank you for the Twitch Prime. It's funny to me because whenever you load up Twitch, the stream starts, it doesn't backtrack most of the chat. So a lot of people think they're the first ones in. So I get a bunch of messages saying first because the chat doesn't load what was there before or something. But anyway, the first thing is hilarious how that's never ended. Literally, that was a thing as far back as I can remember having an audience. People would always comment or write first as soon as possible. I don't know why they do it. I don't know. What, you think you get points or something? Is there some credit for commenting first? I don't know. But I've never tried to acknowledge. I've done the best to never acknowledge it so people feel like there's no reward for it or something. Some channels will favorite the comment or pin the comment that's first or something. I never have done that, and yet people, they always do it. They keep doing it. They've never stopped. I don't know why. But anyway, thank you all for tuning in today. There was something that Mint Mobile was doing. Once again, not trying to come across as a sponsor. They are not asking me to talk about this. This is a subject that I've talked about on the Talks channel before, somewhat in the finance subject, because I find it very, very interesting. That name is taken. Thank you for the Twitch Prime. Hello there, General Kenobi. But on the subject of services, I'm not a huge fan of subscriptions. I don't pay for Netflix. I don't pay for Amazon Prime. I don't pay for Disney Plus. I don't pay for any movie or TV streaming service, pretty much. So it's not really a subject that's very interesting to me. But this one aspect of it does catch my attention. And Mint Mobile is the phone carrier I use, and they work well for me. I don't assume they're going to work well for you, so that's why I'm not saying everyone subscribe to Mint Mobile right now. I'm just saying that's the carrier I use. And they are doing this thing today called the Bobby Vanilla plan. I guess because Bobby Vanilla, what does it say here? I have it up ready for you. Basically, years ago, former pro baseball player Bobby Bonilla signed one of the most famous contracts in sports history, ensuring he would be paid more than $1 million every July 1st, which is today, for 25 years. So to celebrate Bobby's big payday, we've partnered with him to offer the Bobby Bonilla plan. So this is something I've not seen other carriers do before. And if I have, please show me, because I find these stories fascinating, mainly because they force people to do math. And most of the time, phone carriers or services of any kind don't want you to think about the cost. Basically, they just want you to they just want to flash the lowest possible price in your face and have you not think much more about it. And these super duper long-term plans make people actually think about value, and they make you think about savings. And then they also come at the price of security, because obviously, if you pay for a 25-year cell phone contract and then turns out that company goes out of business or something, you could lose a lot of money potentially that way. But there is a huge potential for savings here. So I don't know how to say your name. Ben. I'm just going to say Ben. Thank you for the 200 bits. You didn't say anything, but I appreciate it. And Very Complex, thank you for the Twitch Prime sub. The subscription takeover of unnecessary kinds of software is cringe. I agree. There's all kinds of software and services that are popping up, but phone service is not new. That's been around basically as long as cell phones have existed. There have been cell phone plans. And this one, for those who may have missed it, I find very, very interesting. So essentially, you pay $2,500 today. They're only offering this plan for today. It's a limited time offer. Again, not a sponsor. I don't want you guys to sign up for this. I'm mainly talking about the business model, which I find interesting. But you pay $2,500 today, and then you don't have another phone bill for 25 years. Which is fascinating for me to imagine, because I'm 23 years old, for those who don't know. So more than the amount of time I've been alive, you would have phone service. So it's not the most fancy plan in the world, obviously. It's only 4 gigabytes of 5G data, which for some people is not enough, but for a lot of people in my personal life, particularly people out there like older moms, middle-aged people, grandmas, people that work from home, people that hold on to smartphones for 4 to 5 years. Those types of people are typically not super heavy-duty cellular users. I know a lot of people in the tech community are typically the type, I need unlimited data. I got to make sure I have unlimited data. I need to ensure that I spend all this money every single month. I got to do $50 a month. I got to do $80 a month because I love watching 4K HDR YouTube videos 8 hours a day. I know. I used to be in that department too. I used to think I needed unlimited data until I started looking at how much data I was using, and then I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? So it's not unlimited. Well, it's kind of unlimited. After 4 gigs, you don't get an overage fee. The speed just slows down. So it's technically unlimited, but you just don't get the 5G speeds after 4 gigs. So I found this very interesting because it forces people to think about how much you're actually saving. And the big flashy number they're flexing with this one-day offer is $100 a year for 25 years. That's a long time. And if you consider you're locking in at a certain price, and if you do the math, this ends up being a little over $8 a month. Think about how you're locking in this service in today's value of $8. You know, if there's a lot of inflation that takes place over the next 2 decades or more, because it's 25 years, you've still paid for that service even into the 2040s, right? This is the funny thing about the description. I got a kick out of this because I actually believe it. Some of you may not, but it says right here, 25 years of Mint Mobile wireless for $100 a year. You can lock in Mint Mobile until it's time to move to Mars. Not that we're all moving to Mars, but I think there will be people on Mars in the 2040s. There may not be a ton of people, but I do think watching Booster 3 roll out to the testing pad right now at Starbase, I think there's a lot of development going on in that. It's unrelated, I know, but also thinking about the inflation rates of the past 25 years, which 25 years ago was 1996. Yes, I was not alive back then. The inflation rate was 2.95%, and the current year-over-year inflation rate from 2020 to 2021 is now 4.99%. And because of the stimulus checks and a lot of the dollars that are being printed right now, I expect that to kind of increase a lot in the next few years. And I've already seen it happen firsthand. A lot of prices of things, especially in grocery stores or things there have been shortages of, there's been a lot of inflation going on, mainly just because of the stimulus checks, and all that money came from just U.S. dollars being printed. So basically, for those who don't know, $1 in 1996 is the equivalent to about $1.72 today. So if there's some rapid inflation going on in the next few years, and then we have another 25 years to go until 2046, I think it's very possible that you won't be able to find, of course, a cell phone plan anywhere close to that cheap in the 2040s, because the prices of things are just naturally going to go up over time. There's not really a way to avoid that. And as we print more dollars, the dollar loses its value. So I find that pretty fascinating because we get to think a lot about your long-term future. And I think that not just with cell phone plans, and I understand why a lot of people would not do this with Mint Mobile because they're relatively new. They haven't been around for decades, and yet they're offering a multi-decade plan. So a lot of us could easily look at this and just be like, this feels like Mint Mobile just trying to get a lot of cash now. And that's totally justifiable. I don't think even if it only is available to people who haven't switched yet. So I couldn't even switch to this plan if I wanted to, because I'm already a Mint Mobile customer. But this is mainly to just kind of incentivize people to switch over if they haven't yet. And I think this is a really interesting way to do that. I just haven't seen a phone carrier try to do something like that before. Would be even cooler if Mint Mobile said the price is a gold bar. 2,500. Is that what the price of gold is right now? I don't know. Cyber Octoling, thank you for the 33 months of Twitch Prime. Appreciate that. Very Complex says, I don't trust private companies when they promise something for a long time. They can always change things thanks to their terms of service. Not when it's a contract. They can get into severe legal trouble if they did try to change that. So if you look into the contract and you see something that says it's subject to change, I guess I'll agree. But as far as I'm seeing, they're not doing that. It's pretty carbon. That's the same reason airlines way back in I think the 80s, they used to offer this thing that they don't offer anymore for good reason, because they quickly realized how much money they lose on it. But way back in the 80s, there was this lifetime pass that I think one or two airliners were offering. Typically, it's something you would do if you were like, hey, we have a lot of product, but we don't have a lot of demand right now, so let's offer a super value plan that results in customers paying a lot of money now, and then we'll have to pay for the service ourselves over time. But there were these airliners way back in the 80s that basically were offering $50,000 or like $100,000 tickets, but you could fly anywhere on their airline for life, and you wouldn't have to pay for it. And there were a bunch of people. Was it Wendover Productions? I think I saw it either on Wendover or Polymatter. There was a good YouTube video on it, but there were a few airliners that were basically allowing you to buy a lifetime pass so that you could fly on their airline first class, food and beverages included, anywhere in the world, anytime you wanted, as much as you wanted. So it was a bunch of money up front. It wasn't something everyday people could buy. It was, $50,000 to $100,000, probably more. But they very quickly took that option away because they realized too many people were buying it and they were going to abuse the system. And there were a bunch of people that bought those passes and essentially would like fly to Europe every weekend because they could. They just lived near the airport and they were just like, yeah, I want to just have lunch in Italy today, so I'm just going to fly over there. And they were abusing the system. Well, that's kind of what it's for, is lifetime, right? And it's kind of a dangerous business model. That's why MoviePass didn't work out, is because MoviePass was assuming its own customers weren't going to utilize the service. But the people who did have it when it was around really got their money's worth, because it was basically the price of one movie ticket got you access to as many movies as you wanted. And when people found out that was a thing, they subscribed to it and abused it. And then the company went out of business. It was like, how would you make money with this? They didn't. That's how. That's why they went bankrupt. Let's see. Hoover for One promotion offered free round-trip tickets from the UK to US, and once they realized how much it was going to cost them, they tried to make it as hard as possible to get the tickets until the court ruled they had to distribute them, and they lost a ton of money, and everyone had vacuums they didn't need, so Hoover couldn't sell any more vacuums. That's funny. It's just a fascinating business tactic that it's very rare. So whenever it happens, I kind of, it catches my eye and it makes me want to do the math and break down how much money you can save that way. I would definitely go into debt for something like that. Very Complex says he thinks those lifetime plane passes were like $250,000, and that was in the 80s, so that was probably closer to like $2 million today. So yeah, there'd probably be some people very, very willing to go in debt over that. Did you try the Studio Buds? I didn't order any, no. Mainly because when they came out, when you could order them, they would be delivered when I was away, and I didn't want to work too much on my trip. So I was like, it's not going to work out for me. But then we got Randy to review them on the Tech Podcast, and he was mostly impressed with them. So yeah, I don't think I'll be buying a pair myself, because I've watched a few reviews and heard what I need to hear, and I think I'm good. If you paid out that sort of money, you are going to make sure you get your money's worth from it. Oh yeah, and I think that's what people paying for those lifetime passes were figuring out, and just seeing a 25-year contract of any service, phone service, streaming service, makes me think a lot about how I wish that would be a thing with more options. Imagine if Apple offered Apple One Premiere for like 20 years or something like that, and how you price it to make it worth it. What Mint is doing is pretty standard. Essentially, if you were to not do this specialized 25-year bundle and you wanted the 4 gig plan, that costs around $180 a year. So if you're the type of person that, you're happy with Mint, or you have friends with Mint, and the coverage is going to work for you, and you don't need that much data, you can save $80 a year for 25 years. And the other thing this offers is it locks in the price if in the future Mint Mobile raises their rates, which is another reason I ran the poll today, because I was very curious if there would be that many people interested in doing that with a service that they don't plan on ever canceling. The most common ones I can think of was, movie streaming services. A lot of people like Disney Plus, a lot of people like Netflix or Amazon Prime, and they've been subscribed to them for years, and they haven't, that they don't plan on any time soon canceling that subscription. And I was actually surprised by the results. I knew it wasn't going to be the majority because, there's still a ton of people that don't subscribe to Disney Plus at all, me included. I'm in that boat. So if we're just comparing this to, let me make Twitter big so it's easier for you guys to see. Can I blow up the text here? Hold on. Kind of. It doesn't work super well, but anyway. I have ran a poll for the past 2 hours, and we've got almost 1,000 people to vote on it. But basically the options are, the question is, would you pay $1,200 for 25 years of Disney Plus? Because I know we got a lot of Marvel fans out there, a lot of Star Wars fans, and a lot of people that just love Disney movies. And, I've met tons of Disney fans. But there's people that subscribe to this Disney World pass where you get to go to Disneyland for free like 3 or 4 times a year. And if it's worth it if you plan on going that many times regularly. But I just know that was a very common one. And obviously 43% said they don't use Disney Plus at all. So that's understandable. I'm in that boat. So if we're just ignoring the third option and just paying attention at these two, it's almost a third, which I know 18% in the grand scheme of things doesn't sound like a lot, but I intentionally am trying to filter this out so that we don't include people who aren't paying for Disney Plus at all, because that's what I wish I could do. I like running polls on YouTube and Twitter because I can get an idea of what my audience or what people in general think on a particular subject, but it's a shame I can't specialize. I wish I could just send out a poll to Disney Plus people, or I could just send out a poll to people with iPhones who use iOS, because I don't want to get the Android users confused. Because if I'm asking something about the Apple Watch, I don't want the Android people coming in and voting a particular way, or I don't want people who don't have Disney Plus tinkering the poll. So that's why I adjust it like this. And if you're just looking at the top 2 columns, it's like a third of people who use Disney Plus, at least in this 1,000 poll sample, said they would pay $1,200 up front for 25 years, which is not terribly different because if you're paying year by year with Mint Mobile, that's $180 a year. It's $15 a month, and this is $8.33. So it's about half, not quite half. It would be $7.50 if it was exactly half. But for the sake of the example, Disney Plus currently costs $8 a month. So I kind of cut that in half and saw what that would cost after a 25-year block, which is a pretty round number, $1,200. It's kind of easy to recall. And so you would basically save half the price of Disney Plus over a 25-year block. But the other big advantage is you're ensuring that the price doesn't go up, which is a huge selling point for a lot of people. Because Disney Plus has already gone up. Netflix has gone up. Amazon Prime has gone up. And I'm sure Apple TV Plus and HBO Max and pretty much any TV streaming service is going to raise their rates eventually. It's just a matter of time. For one, to just combat inflation, because the power of the U.S. dollar goes down slowly over time. And right now it's actually going down quite a bit because of the stimulus checks. So if you can lock in that value of today's U.S. dollar right now, for one, I'm sure my 1,000 sample is not completely accurate to Disney Plus's actual user base. So I'm not saying 1/3 of all Disney Plus subscribers would do that, but Disney, you could technically get. I'm gonna go ahead and say it's not a third, and it's maybe more like 20%. But if you had a 20% of your subscribers all willing to drop $1,200 now, opposed to $8 a month, that would just be an insane amount of upfront capital, followed by many, many years of not getting as much consistent, monthly income. So I understand completely why Disney doesn't do that, because they know they can get way more money out of you in the long run. because they get to raise their rates. It's $8 now. It could easily be $9 next year. This is what Netflix has been doing. They pretty much raise all of their subscriptions by $1 every year. And I think Disney Plus could easily start doing that same thing, or even every other year. So by 2020, no, not 2020, by 2046, 25 years from now, Disney Plus could be $20 a month if they keep up with that trend, or more, because of the weakening of the U.S. dollar. On top of Disney Plus thinks that deal is more worth it because they're going to have a larger catalog. You know, all of those shows and stuff that come out by then are still going to be there because Disney owns the rights to them and stuff. So I don't think, I'm not trying to say Disney will do this or it makes sense for Disney to do this. I just try to point this out when I can because I think it goes over a lot of people's heads that this, when they do these type of long-term contracts, this is your best chance, not necessarily with the Mint Mobile one, but if they ever start offering something like this, any streaming service or any subscription service you pay for, pay attention and start looking at the numbers and start doing some math, because similar to the airlines that were offering lifetime passes for flying, this is your best chance at abusing that company's value because it's something that they have to stick to contract-wise and you get to take advantage of to the best of your ability. And I also just like the idea of paying for something outright for an extended period of time. I don't care if it's a phone service or a streaming service. I would actually be way more tempted to get Netflix if there was a lifetime option, because what me and my wife are into is financial independence, which is, you know, building up your passive income to the point where, you know, life costs money. Even if you have a paid off house, even if your car is paid off, still property taxes, water bill, electric bill, even when you get solar, you know, there's all kinds of taxes and bills and things you got to pay for monthly that doesn't go away, even if you try to live debt-free as best you can. So building up your passive income, which is money you don't have to work for, you could sit around all month and still make that money. That passive income, once it starts covering all of your monthly expenses, so your water bill, your property taxes, your phone bill, Wi-Fi bill, all of that stuff, once your passive income covers that, it basically means you could retire, you could stop working, and your passive income would cover all of your expenses. And the reason we don't, you know, I was tweeting about this yesterday because we just canceled Apple TV Plus because we had the free almost 2 years of it ever since November 1st of 2019. We just know that this is an infinite cost. So that's why I don't care that it's $5 a month or if it was 99 cents a month. It has nothing to do with the price, for the record. I'm not saying Apple TV Plus is too expensive. I just haven't found any of the shows. Same thing with Netflix. It's not just Apple. Same thing with Amazon Prime. Same thing with Hulu. Same thing with Discovery Plus or Paramount Plus. All of those services are infinite expenses. They don't have a fixed price. You can only rent them for a 30-day block at a time, and sometimes they give you discounts annually, which I try to do most of the time. If there is a subscription I plan on utilizing, I will look for the long-term best savings. And when companies like Mint do things like this, that's where there's tremendously huge potentials for savings, is if you're committing for a long period of time. So I don't like the idea of paying $15 a month for Netflix, but if they offered a lifetime pass for Netflix that was like $4,000 or $5,000, but I knew that I would have access to Netflix for the rest of my life, or at least an extended period of time. If it's 25 years, I could die at any time. I could die tomorrow, you know. That's a huge, extremely long period of time where I'm like, I'll be in probably a whole different stage of life by then. That's just, for me, it's an unfathomable amount of time, you know. I have literally not existed that long. So I cannot comprehend what the earliest possible memory I can imagine. Me as a child, me as a baby, I can't even think back that far. That's not 25 years for me. So that's why this type of thing is just a fascinating business decision in any monthly carrier, whether it be life insurance, car insurance, or monthly subscriptions or what have you. So I would genuinely be far more interested in paying thousands of dollars now if I knew that I could keep that streaming service for life. But the reason that's probably not worth it, I was talking to my wife about just a few minutes ago, is because you can invest that money into the general stock market or possibly crypto if that doesn't get banned, or any type of investment that carries its value over time. And in that case, the monthly subscription is still worth it, because you'd be better off paying for Netflix on a monthly basis and then just taking $5,000 and putting it into S&P 500, and that has an average growth rate of 7 to 10% or whatever, and that will combat the inflation rate and make you far more money than you'd be able to save by not paying for Netflix monthly and that kind of thing. So even if you're really financially able to drop big money on plans like this, you'd still probably be better off just investing that money instead of dropping it all on a service that you wouldn't have to worry about for a long time. But either way, I just like the idea of erasing bills. You know, if you had a water bill, like something we do with our electric bill, because our electric company kind of sucks. They all do in California, and they charge you a convenience fee if you decide to pay with a credit card or a debit card. Basically, there's a convenience fee unless you pay with a check and mail it in. And we don't want to write checks and mail them in because that takes too long, and you'd have to buy stamps anyway. So we just pay our electric bill with a credit card, and I get cash back on that credit card. And we realized that instead of paying the electric bill once a month, and we plan on living here for quite some time, we can just pay for like 6 months to a year's worth of the electricity up front. You can pay more than what's owed and basically give the electric company a huge advance, but the what's it called? The convenience fee stays the same price because it's a one-time fee. So instead of, for example, this isn't what our electric bill is, but just for the sake of simplicity, let's say our electric bill was $100 a month. So it's $1,200 a year, and that's what the average was. And every one of those charges throughout the year, I'm paying like a $1.75 convenience fee to use my credit card. But instead, if I just pay $1,200 at the beginning of the year, and that covers all of my electric bill for a whole year, I only had to pay that convenience fee once, and I also get 1% cash back on that one payment at the beginning of the year, and that covers the entire convenience fee anyway. So we realized that we saved more money by just paying it all at once. So that's what we do. We paid a huge electric bill at the beginning of the year, and now we just don't have an electric bill until next year. So a lot of people do that, which I think is cool, because I just like not having recurring bills. And if it was possible for me to basically erase my phone bill for 25 years, that sounds amazing, just to think about. Yeah, when's your next phone bill? Oh, 2046. That sounds amazing. I love that. And if there was a way to not get price hiked over time by, carriers and different companies raising their rates on stuff, and you could lock in your price for that long. Oh, that sounds so cool. And I know why the companies don't do that. It's because they know they lose too much money on that. So I totally get it. But at the same time, if they do it, pay attention. Do your best to pick up on when it's a good deal, and take notice of that kind of thing, because I think it's cool. 1,000 bits from Chris Norton. How was your break? It was pretty busy. There was a lot going on. There was a lot happening. It was eventful. It was good, though. We saw a lot of family. There were a lot of help moving things around, loading up the U-Haul, unloading the U-Haul, unpacking things, and then visiting other family members and driving, and lots of driving. Oh, man. 14 hours of driving in one day. So it was a lot, but it was good. It was refreshing. I didn't vlog very much. Sometimes I vlog my vacations, but this one was just so busy that I didn't have much time to film. And there was a lot of people I was with, and it's kind of socially awkward to just pull out a camera and start filming with you. There wasn't a lot of time during vacation where I was just by myself. I was pretty much with my wife and my friends and everybody the whole time. Rymo87, thank you for the 15 months of Twitch Prime. Glad you're back. I haven't heard your thoughts on Windows 11 yet. Do you have any at all? Basically, the second half of the last Tailosive Tech podcast, we went into more depth with it. I guess I could summarize that best I could. I didn't watch the event because, again, I was on break, and it didn't. Windows is not super interesting to me, for one. But I like what they're doing. What they're saying sounds good, but what my biggest issues with Windows has never been with what Microsoft has said about them. My biggest problems with Windows has always been with the execution of them, and Apple's not innocent of this either. But when they updated Windows, when they announced Windows 10, everything sounded great. You know, it sounded reliable and it sounded cool and the UI looked good, and I didn't really have any graphical or layout problems with Windows 10. And the same thing with Windows 11. I think the updated design looks good. The center dock looks very Mac-like, but I like Mac OS, so I'm okay with them stealing things from Apple. Requiring the 64-bit architecture is interesting because Apple got a lot of backlash for that. Now Microsoft's doing the same thing. But I was very surprised with how little backwards compatibility there is basically with Windows 11. There's a lot of devices that aren't compatible, which surprised me. Basically, if you have any Surface device older than 2018, you can't get it, which is not that old. People were surprised that macOS Monterey was requiring 2015 MacBooks or later, or 2016 MacBooks or later. People were like, "Wow, Apple's not giving Monterey to everything," and it was like Windows 11 is 3 years sooner than that. It's just kind of interesting, but my biggest problem with Windows, because I used Windows a lot growing up, was that it was just unreliable, and I had a lot of software update problems, and I had a lot of driver corruption problems, where I would just get a software update without my permission, and it would just break a lot of the microphone and webcam drivers. And I've heard that Windows 11 is trying to help fix that with the software updates being faster and more in the background. I don't know, but I don't plan on finding out, really, because I am very excited to drop unhealthy amounts of money on my next Mac, and I'm very excited for the transition to Apple Silicon, and nothing Microsoft is doing or AMD or Intel or any of that seems as interesting as Apple making their own chips and them smoking everybody and having extremely good value with the M1X chip or the M2 chip. That's where most of my interest is with desktops and laptops, because I'm the Apple sheep and I'm the Apple guy, so that's, a lot of where my interest is. And Windows is just like, I don't know. I feel like there's not a lot of features Windows has ever offered that people like. It's just that there's software and games and programs that they have to use that are only available on Windows, and that's why they like Windows. I know there's probably exceptions to that rule, but most of the people I've met, that's the situation they're in. There's not like something actually part of Windows that they like. They're just like, oh, I need this program, and that program happens to be on Windows. Or I like playing PC games, and those games only work on Windows, or they work better on Windows. So I have to use Windows because of that support. And because of that, I don't really care. It looks good. I like the updated design. The fact that it can run Android apps it's kind of neat, but there's not a lot of good Android apps in my opinion. Like the Play Store has never been a great strength of Android in my I think that's a lot of the reason people stick with iOS is because they feel like the quality of apps on the iOS app store is far better and there's less malware. The Play Store has never been customization and value of premium hardware. That's typically why you would go with an Android. The Play Store apps are usually a lot more clunky and a lot less optimized for the hardware. So now it's like, hey, now you can run an Android app on your PC. I'm like, what apps are people? Was there an Android app we all wanted on our PC? Because I don't know. Do you want the Twitter app or something? If so, is that going to make a big difference? I don't know. But yeah, that was like a headlining feature. Basically, meh. I hope the rollout is more stable. I hope that Windows 11 works reliably for people and doesn't brick hardware like Windows 10 did. I happen to disagree with a lot of people. There's a Windows Twitter app. Okay, so it's pointless anyway. Don't even need that. I don't know what Android apps people wanted on their PC, but when Marquez in his video was saying, Windows 7 was good, Windows 8 bad, Windows 10 good, and I was like, no, I heavily disagreed, because there's a bunch of people I knew that had absolute nightmare Windows 10 experiences, including myself. I was using a PC when Windows 10 came out, and I refused to update to Windows 8 because I heard so many bad things about it, and Windows 7 was working reliably for me. That's what I was editing videos on back then. And I was like, okay, Windows 7 is good. People seem to be saying nice things about Windows 10. People like it. There's not much bad going on. It was pretty new at the time, so I was like, okay, I'll put Windows 10 on my PC. And it just broke a ton of my applications. They stopped working. I never tried Windows 8, so I'm sure 10 is better than 8, but I just mean I wouldn't give Windows 10 the thumbs up of, yeah, Windows 10, we like that, because it just destroyed a bunch of people's PCs, and the updates are terrible. And I bought a whole separate PC later that I was like, okay, I'm going to use my Mac for work, but I just want a PC for gaming. And then the PC I got for gaming, that ran into Windows update problems and driver corruption, and I just couldn't use it for the one purpose. I wasn't even trying to edit videos on it. I just wanted it to play games and live stream them. And Windows 10 kept bricking my webcam, and it kept breaking my microphone driver. And there wasn't anything I could do about it, because that was just the latest Windows 10 version that was out, so there was no way to change it. So I was not happy with Windows 10, to the point that I would say I hated it. I never hated Android. I just prefer iOS. Like, I'm just comfortable with it. I think it works better for my needs, and it fits well within my ecosystem, and I'm comfortable with it. And I like how the App Store apps are very optimized for the hardware. I like AirDrop, and I'm a big fan of iMessage. I know that iMessage doesn't sound like a big feature. People act like, well, it's just texting. People just keep their iPhone so they can get their blue bubble. Here's the thing. Texting is a very common feature of phones, not just smartphones in general. So if there's one phone that can get texting a lot better than every other phone, may not sound like, it's not a very complicated feature. It's not like portrait mode video, or it's not like ultra wide or telephoto algorithms and computation. It doesn't sound like a big important feature, but it's a simple one that I think iOS gets better than pretty much any other platform, because Apple got it right from the beginning to bundle your phone number and tie it in with your Apple ID, so that if you're texting another iPhone, it goes over the internet instead of SMS. And that's made it immensely helpful, especially for people who travel a lot. Like, knowing that you can just have one messaging app to text people with, Android or iPhone, but then when you go on a plane and you don't have cell towers and you can't SMS on a plane, you have the plane's Wi-Fi, and you can text people through the same platform via the internet, and then you build in FaceTime through there, and you can send much higher resolution pictures over iMessage and that kind of thing. It's just simple. I understand why someone would not switch to Android simply because of iMessage. A lot of people, I think, underrate that. They act like it's not a big deal. And that's the truth. Most people don't use SMS. They have to get their Android phone and then use some other messaging app. They get WhatsApp, or they get Facebook Messenger, or they DM people through something else. But Google's trying to do their own Allo, and then your phone is definitely going to build in its own messages app for SMS texting. But then you have to kind of load that SMS texting app into Messenger. So there's like a fix. I know there's a way to get around it, but the user has to fix it, whereas on iPhone, you don't have to. So it's a basic thing that people are like, it's just a blue bubble. They just want it for the blue bubble. It's like, you do that a lot, though. Texting is a very common feature. Some people take a lot of pictures and videos on their phone. Some don't. So that's like you put a lot of emphasis on pictures and videos. Some people will care. Some people won't. You put a big emphasis on the display being big and vibrant. Some people care about that. Some people don't. But pretty much everybody who buys a phone is almost guaranteed to do pretty regular texting on the daily basis. So that's why iMessage is a big deal, and probably why a lot of people prefer iOS. iMessage is only big in the US. Yeah, I know. My father-in-law's he just got here from Australia. He's asking everybody who we introduce him to for their WhatsApp. I get that the rest of the world uses WhatsApp, but that's still just a backup because SMS is so broken for the rest of the world. Texting is so dated and so unoptimized for today's phones that everyone has to rely on this third party that's owned by Facebook, that is not good at managing your data nor your privacy, so that it basically results in everybody having to use WhatsApp. I know. But there's a reason I think iMessage is very popular in the US. It's just because it's so simple. But iMessage is satisfying at texting. Yeah, that's a good point. Consumes a lot less data. I know a lot of people that use WhatsApp, and the app takes up like tens of gigs on their phone. And it's also owned by Facebook, which I'm not a fan of, so that's kind of annoying. Broman says, I have Windows 11 on my laptop now. It runs great. Animations are smooth. Boots up much faster and just feels snappy. Looking forward to the final release. That's good. I'm glad it's working for you. I'm not the type of person that is willing to try it just because there's really not many advantages to me getting accustomed to Windows 11, especially during this whole Apple Silicon transition. Like, Apple switching to their own chips is such a game changer. I think there were some other channels talking about it, but it kind of eliminates the Apple tax to a certain way. Like, the idea of you can build your own PC or you can buy a PC that's way more powerful for cheaper is starting to fall away, and it's turning more into just like you buy whatever hardware you need for the software that you need. Like, I happen to really like macOS just for macOS because I like iMessage, obviously, and I love AirDrop, and I just love the way it's laid out. I like that it's not trying to be a touchscreen. It's just trying to be the best of a keyboard and mouse interface, and it works great for my job. But also, Final Cut Pro is only on the Mac, and there's no way to really get it on Windows or Linux or anything, and that's the top application I use for work. I use my Mac almost... Final Cut is almost always open. And I love live streaming with OBS, which works really awesome with Mac OS. And there's just not much I could do with a Windows 11 machine that would help me in my job. If I was more into gaming and I wanted to play more PC games, then it would maybe make more sense to get a PC. But I don't do much gaming at all anymore. And I like hardware that communicates well with each other. You know, I'm super excited for universal control. I've just been using my iPad without the keyboard case now because I want to eventually get to the point where I can just have my keyboard and mouse for the Mac, and then I just move over and start using my iPad with that. And I love how it works in the ecosystem, and it has productivity-based software that I use for my job. So Windows is just, it doesn't make sense for me. I don't need it. But for those who do need it, I hope it works well for you. I'm not wishing any ill intent on Microsoft users or Windows users. Like, all we can really base our buying habits and our consumer choices on is our past experiences, right? You know, if you've bought an iPhone and it's worked well for you and it's reliable enough, and it may not be perfect, but for the most part it gets the job done and you enjoy it, you're more inclined to get another iPhone. You want to get an iPhone after that that's better, that also provides that reliability you've come to know and love. And if you bought an iPhone and it sucked, and the hardware was crappy, and the software didn't do what you want, and you're disappointed with it, now you're not going to buy an iPhone, right? Now you're going to see what else is out there, and you may try an Android. You may like that Android, gets the job done, it has the software you like, now you're going to keep buying Androids, right? So in that situation for me, I bought several PCs. They were not reliable. They didn't do what I want them to. And they literally I would start the day sometimes with turning on the computer, and there were just an hour of updates waiting for me. And when the updates were done, they broke my drivers. So because of that past experience, I'm like, I don't really want to go back there. I hope it gets better for everyone else. If it works well for you, I'm happy. But if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And the iMac Pro is definitely not broken for me. But I would obviously just like a faster one. If I could export videos faster, if I could have a cooler looking computer, that would also be great, because I do care about aesthetics to a certain degree. And that's why I'm waiting for Mac Pro or Mac Mini or whatever Apple has in store, which is a couple months away. I'm excited for it. But Windows 11 had nothing that made me really want to try Windows again. As far as I could see, there's nothing that I was like, man, I really got to get a PC soon. if there's enough demand for it, and then, you know, if I got a huge number of audience members that were like, Drew, you need to try this, or Drew, you need to check out the Microsoft this, I'd try my best to listen to you guys and act based on what my audience wants. So if there was enough people asking, I would do it. But my guilty pleasure is definitely the Surface Studio, and that's not getting Windows 11, which kind of bums me out because that was my favorite piece of Surface hardware. Like if I had to buy a computer from Microsoft, like gun to my head, Drew, you got to buy a Surface something. You got to buy something under the Surface brand. What would you get? Definitely. I loved checking out the Surface Studio whenever I went to Best Buy, and I thought it's a really interesting concept that is probably limited by Windows. I think Apple could probably do a way better one, but they're too scared to do one themselves. I just think it would be cool if you guys look at the... Okay, I'm going to bring it up just because we're talking about it, and I think it looks amazing. It's a 28-inch display, and they haven't made a new one for like 4 years, so I'm guessing it doesn't sell very well. And they're probably just going to end up scrapping it entirely due to lack of demand for it. But it's also really expensive, so I kind of get why there's not much demand for it. But okay, this is a Surface Studio 2. I think it came out in 2017 or something. But where's a good shot of its design? Okay, this is good. This is what I like. Imagine if this was an Apple product. Ignore this for a second. Ignore the Intel and ignore the GPU. Imagine if we just made this a Mac Mini, right? It's like a Mac Mini sized little box at the bottom. And you put an M1 or an M1X, preferably an M1X, in that little box. And then you made like a mini LED iPad-looking device that's 28 inches. It has Face ID, and it has the smart connector for your Apple Pencil, so you can drop your pencil and snap it right on the side. And you can still use your keyboard and mouse, and when it's folded up like that, it uses Mac OS, right? Because that's when a desktop's in that configuration, it's best to use a keyboard and mouse because you get tired reaching your arm up and everything. But then when you feel like it, you can fold it down, like in these pictures, and when you fold it downward, it switches to iPad OS. And now you've got a touch interface that's optimized. Oh, here you go. Throw some Thunderbolt ports on the back. I don't want this USB-A crap. Just give me like 4 Thunderbolt ports on the back. iPad with an Apple Pencil on the side. And you have this giant 28-inch canvas that you can interact with really intensive drawing programs. And we know that the iPad can run on the M1 chip and all that. And then you have M1 and M1X in here. And sure, because it's Apple, let's say it's $4,000. I don't need it to be $3,500. $4,000 or $5,000 though, but you got insanely good performance and an iPad, interface. I would totally be all over that. I would so buy that. I would just ditch my iPad at that point because most of the time my iPad stays in my desk. Maybe I would get like an iPad that's smaller. Like I might have just an iPad for the go, like an 11-inch iPad or even an iPad mini if they gave it no home button and, USB-C and the more futuristic device. I would totally buy that. It's the same price as an iMac Pro. Yeah, but an iMac Pro doesn't do all that stuff. The only reason I don't think people like the Surface Studio is, for one, people who buy PC desktops are more likely to just build their own, and they like having a tower and they can use their own custom hardware and all that. But also the specs of the Surface Studio 2 were never very good. Even when they were new, it was basically a laptop CPU and GPU. It's not very powerful, and it's really just meant for people who like to draw, and it's also very expensive. So it's too narrow of a niche for the Microsoft fan base to be interested in. But Apple has a huge fan base of people that love dropping gobs of money on beautiful Apple hardware. Like, think of how many people bought the Pro Display XDR. Especially think about how many people bought the Pro Display that were not people who bought reference monitors. People were just buying iMacs and just using the default iMac display. They were suddenly dropping $6,000 on Pro Displays because it was from Apple and it looked cool. And I think a ton of people would buy an Apple Studio Pro, whatever you want to call it, that could be an iPad folded downward and a Mac folded upward. I just wish there was some kind of device that could do more, because Apple clearly wants us to buy both. I know that. After watching Universal Control, they clearly want us to all buy iPads and all buy Macs. But my point is, the people who buy $5,000 Macs, they're still going to buy iPads. Like I just said, I went through that mental exercise. I was like, I wouldn't need an iPad if I did that. Actually, for when I'm on the go, I would still want to buy an 11-inch iPad. You know, something to throw in a bag and that's bigger than my phone. That would be the exact same market. It's like Apple wants you to buy a MacBook and an iPad. That's why they won't do that. Yeah, they still will. Trust me. If I'm not, before getting back onto the iPad subject now, we weren't suggesting putting the M1X in the iPad. We were just saying the M1. So the people who want the best iPad Pro, they got the M1, but they're still going to buy a 16-inch MacBook Pro if it has an M1X in it. They're going to buy both. Okay, my iPad can run macOS now, but I still want the faster chip. So totally, yeah, I'd buy a 16-inch MacBook Pro and an M1 iPad Pro. Oh, it's so satisfying pushing it down. The mechanism is so good. Yeah, I like the videos they have of it. Let me see if I can play some. Do they have one here? I remember when they unveiled this. I think I was doing tech videos. Oh, am I going to get a copyright strike? Probably. Okay, I'll just make sure it's muted. But, that animation never went away. But yeah, when they unveiled this, I thought it was the coolest thing in the world, and I was hoping Apple would make a more futuristic-looking iMac soon, and that was 4 years ago. This Windows update thing is covered on the screen the whole time. But yeah, just having a display that can pivot all the way to the... Wow, 50% more graphics. Wow. I believe this is the only Surface desktop they make, too, which is fun. It's like the fastest Surface ever. It's like, I hope so. It's the most expensive one ever. Look at that. One finger, you push the whole thing down and it lays flat. Oh, I like the dial thing. It's kind of overkill and unnecessary, but still. Just the demo of it looks great. So, I know I haven't, and you probably don't believe me, but I was honestly very, very tempted when this came out. I was like, ooh, I really want that. But the thing is that the performance of it kind of is trash. It's not very fast. And I would have to use Adobe products, and I'd have to pay for expensive software, and I don't want to pay for Adobe again. I like Final Cut, but I love this hardware, and I wish I could have my Pro Class software on that hardware because it looks gorgeous and it works really well. I guess some people might get annoyed. Some people might get annoyed with the fingerprints because you probably would have a bunch of fingerprints on your desktop all the time. So they'd have to include some kind of cloth or something. General consumer will not, like student and all. Yeah, but the iPad costs more. I know we've been through this discussion a lot of times, so I'll try to keep this brief. But okay, M1 iPad would only be competing with other M1 Macs, right? Because if you tried to line it up against an M1X Mac, it would lose every time. It would be like, okay, that MacBook is way faster, way more performance. So get that. So if we're only comparing the M1 iPad to other M1 Macs, that's MacBook Air and the base model MacBook Pro, iPad Pro easily costs way more. And we've established Apple is totally fine cannibalizing their own hardware if they can get you to spend more money. That's why the iPhone came out, even though it cannibalized... Sorry for the lag. Dishy McFlatface is looking for a dish. Satellite, sorry. But Apple unveiled the iPhone, and that cannibalized the iPod. And they're okay with that because the iPhone costs more. They can get more money from you that way. I'm saying it's the same thing with the M1 iPad Pro. Through the Magic Keyboard case, 5G cellular option, and the fact that it starts with 128 gigs, not 256, to get a 256 gig iPad Pro with a Magic Keyboard case, it's way more than a MacBook Pro or a MacBook Air. Costs significantly more money. So yeah, it may cannibalize some M1 Macs, but those people will be spending more. And you can upsell them on an Apple Pencil. Now you can say, hey, you got to spend $130 on this stylus. Whereas if they just buy a MacBook Air, they're not going to do that. Let's see. Spend the price of an iPad Pro, but just for the software and touchscreen and Apple Pencil support. The price of an iPad Pro, but just for the software. Okay, I think I'm trying to. You buy your Mac and you buy an add-on in the App Store, which allows it to be an iPad. As long as there's a way to do it, we can work on getting it cheaper in the future. I wouldn't mind if it was super expensive. If it was like, okay, if you want to put Mac OS on the iPad, you got to spend $2,000 or $3,000. I'd be like, okay, that's a lot, but at least there's a way to do it. Right now, even if you had $10,000, there's not a way to do it. I don't think that's going to result in the general people buying a Mac and an iPad, though. I think the more common... I don't think general customers are going to buy both. I think they're going to buy one or the other. And if they're buying an iPad, they're going to keep it for an extremely long time, because there's very little reasons to update your iPad anymore. And the most common situation, especially with students I've ran into, is do I buy a MacBook or do I buy an iPad with a keyboard case? I haven't seen a bunch of people say, I'll buy a MacBook and then I'll also buy an iPad this or whatever. Let's see. Isn't the iPad Pro with Magic Keyboard and Apple Pencil cheaper than getting a MacBook Air and an iPad? Or iPad Air combined? Maybe, but I just don't think that's the most common scenario. I don't think that's what most is doing. Do you think Tesla will achieve Elon's goal of 20 million cars delivered in 2030? Probably. A lot of people doubted the 500,000 cars by 2020, and that pretty much happened. I think he said that in like 2014. They were saying like many, many years ago, he said like they were going to deliver 500,000 vehicles in 2020, and everyone was like, no, that's crazy. And that's pretty much what happened. And they were shut down for 6 weeks with COVID. They would have easily surpassed 500,000 if it weren't for COVID. Because of COVID, they were like pretty much right on 500,000. It was like 100 cars under the goal or something. It was a very small detail in the grand scheme of things. They were basically 99.99% of their goal with the factory shut down for 6 weeks. So I'd say, yeah, probably 20 million, maybe. It's fair to say the first 5 million vehicles built is probably easier than the next 10 million built. But if they get them cheap enough and they're able to scale up battery production, if it's not 20 million, I bet it'll still be well over 10 million. It'll still be a lot. If Apple charges a subscription to dual boot macOS on the iPad for $1,000 a year, would you do it? No, that's too much. I love the iPad and I want it to do more, but yeah, that would be an unrealistic. It just financially wouldn't make sense. It'd be maybe different if they gave the iPad like the fastest Apple Silicon, like they gave it the same chip as the Mac Pro, but they're not going to do that. That wouldn't happen. So, like, as much as I wanted the iPad to do more, it still is the M1 chip, which is ultimately slower than my iMac Pro. So it wouldn't completely be able to replace my iMac Pro, and I would still want to buy a Mac because I would want that higher end performance or something. But yeah, if it's a money problem, Apple could charge whatever they want. Make macOS on the iPad an app that costs $300 or something. If you're worried about it taking too much money away from all the people who are apparently buying iPad Airs and MacBook Airs, I don't think there's that many, but apparently that's what a lot of people think people are doing. Then just charge extra for it. Let's see. Want general people to buy $549.9. Yeah, it was really close. I think it was more than that. It was more than 499,500 vehicles. It was very close. But with the 25K model, if they're able to mass produce that. Let's see. What would you do if Final Cut Pro became a subscription? Oof. I really don't want that to happen. It depends on how they did it. Like, if they just said, I can still keep Final Cut Pro, I just won't get any new updates, then I probably would just do that. I would just keep using the older version of Final Cut and be like, okay, I won't get software updates. And then many years down the road, I would probably have to subscribe to it or something. But I would definitely consider the alternatives, like DaVinci Resolve, I believe. There's a free version and a paid version, but the paid version isn't a subscription. It's a one-time thing. So I would definitely look into that and compare the performance and feature set and all that. My buddy Ross, who got the Red camera, is looking into... He's using the free version of DaVinci, but I think he's going to buy the pro version or something. So I really don't want that to happen. I would love to just keep Final Cut forever and not have to worry about it being a subscription. But because Apple seems to be so subscription hungry these days, it really does feel like they're going to turn everything into a monthly cost. I don't know. I'm going to be stressed out. It'll depend on how much it costs. I do subscribe to Premium right now because I use it for all my video thumbnails, and I do find that worth it because it only ends up costing me about $4 a month. So I do pay for that currently. I'm debating whether or not I want to renew it this year, but so I use Final Cut a lot for my job. I do, that's how I make money. So if it was something like $10 a month and I couldn't find a good alternative with DaVinci and I wasn't comfortable with it and the export times were way slower, I guess I could see myself caving in and just paying for it. Hopefully there's an annual option. $3,000 for 30 years. Yeah, I might do that. That would probably that sucks because, I've been using it without paying a monthly fee for it for how long now, and it's been great and it's worked well. So to just suddenly be like, well, this thing I've been using for years, I now have to spend $3,000 on. Yeah, that would be very frustrating. I'm going to be annoyed no matter what they do. But best case scenario, they just say, if you've already paid for Final Cut, you can keep it and you'll keep getting updates. We're just going to offer a subscription for the people who don't want to pay $300 up front. That wouldn't bother me. That's just an additional option to give people a taste. Maybe someone's planning on using Final Cut for 2 or 3 months and they don't want to commit fully. If it's just an other way of using it that's cheaper for people who don't have $300 to drop, that's fine. I don't have any problem with that. But if it starts intervening on my involvement and I have to start paying for something that I used to not have to pay for, that obviously is going to be very frustrating. How often does Final Cut update? Not terribly often. It usually gives me a big pop-up that says, I just installed some new things, and it says, optimized for Apple Silicon, and they changed the razor icon, which was stupid. It used to be a razor blade, and that's how you would trim your clips, but the latest update, they changed it to a pair of scissors, and it looks weird because the scissors don't align with where the line is. So that's one of those updates where I'm like, man, I really did not need that. Thanks, Apple. So there's a lot of updates I don't care for, but for the most part, they're good. And I don't know. It's probably once a month, I want to say. I feel like, yeah, around once a month I get an update. Sometimes it might be every other month or something. It's not a crazy amount. Not like Adobe. When I had Adobe, it felt like there were new Creative Cloud updates like every 3 days. There was another one. They're like, before you open this program, we got to install this update. And it was just like, oh, my gosh. No, thank you. Would you still make videos 30 years later, though? That's a good question. Maybe not as often, but probably. It's hard to know because, like we talked about at the beginning of the stream, I cannot fathom that amount of time. I have not existed that long. I can't imagine that much time going by. I could be a very different person. I could be dead. I could be retired from YouTube. Maybe I just get sick of it someday and decide I don't want to do it anymore. YouTube could change their policies so that I'm not allowed really to make money anymore. They could decide, Google could decide that YouTube loses too much money, so they don't want to keep paying its creators. And that could screw me up and just turn me into a full-time Twitch streamer, and maybe that doesn't work out. There's all kinds of things that could happen. There could be a third world war. I could get enlisted or something. I don't know. There's so much that could happen. If I were to ask myself now, though, I really love making videos. I love live streaming, and I love covering news that I find interesting, whether it's Tesla or Apple. And I've been doing it not terribly long. Sorry for the lag. Starlink freaked out for a minute there. I could be living. I don't think I'll ever go to Mars, even if it was free. Come on, Starlink. You can figure this out. Katrina Bryce says, I can remember that far back. Telecommunications was very different then. Analog phones, dial-up modems, cell phones were car battery sized and only worked within a 2-kilometer radius of the city center. Wow. Yeah, I wasn't around for all that. I kind of grew up in the age of the iPod and the first iPhone and all that. Will Apple even be around 30 years later? I think so, but maybe not. If I were to guess, if I was making a prediction, I don't think the world's all going to end. I don't think I'm going to die in 30 years. And I think that as of right now, I really enjoy making content. I enjoy covering Apple and Tesla. I enjoy having a community of people that have similar interests as mine. And I like making videos and uploading them and making this a living. And even if I was financially independent, I probably would still do this just for fun because I enjoy it. I look forward to it every day. And if I were guessing, I think in 30 years, I'll probably still have this interest. There's certain things that haven't really changed very much in my existence. When I was younger, I didn't really like scary movies or horror shows. And I've gotten older, and now that's become more interesting and fun to watch for me. So it's, there's tastes that change and preferences that alter over time. And I used to always want the biggest phone possible. Now I'm kind of starting to like smaller phones again with the 12 mini. So tastes could change on some things, whether it be food or shows or phone sizes. But there's some overarching big picture things that I haven't really budged on so far. But again, I haven't been around for 30 years. So maybe I don't know what the impact is of having a particular job or pursuing a career for 30 years. I've been doing YouTube full-time for a little over 4 years now. I went full-time in May of 2017, and I'm enjoying it so far. I like it, and I'm having fun, and I want to keep doing it. But who's to say in 10 years or 20 years I decide, this is exhausting and I'm tired of this and I want to try something different, or I just don't want to work at all. I just retire and travel and keep up with family and just be a social guy, and I don't want to work or feel like I have to work or anything. Things could change, but if I were to guess, I think I'll still be making videos in 30 years. Just because I don't comprehend a situation where this stops becoming interesting. I feel like technology and electric vehicles and space exploration and Neuralink and all that stuff is only going to get more interesting over time. And most of my interest in tech, and the reason I did tech videos and talk about Apples, because I'm always interested in talking about the latest generation of things. What's the best port? What's the best silicon? What's the best display? Talking about what's at the cutting edge, what just came out, what's about to come out, what's coming out soon. I'm fascinated by the future and the future of technology, and that doesn't really go away. If anything, it should get more interesting over the next few decades when space exploration starts to become a more commonplace thing and EVs start to take over and start outnumbering gas vehicles. There's going to be all kinds of interesting things to talk about and cover. So I don't think that'll go away, but I might change, just like maybe when you're younger, you don't like drinking coffee, and then you get older and you start to love the taste of coffee. It's a bad example because I still don't like coffee. I tried coffee on my vacation. I never liked it growing up, and I still don't like it now. Even with creamer, I just the flavor of it isn't my thing. It's just a personal taste thing. But we don't know. We'll find out. Will FSD V9 be out in 30 years? Maybe 30 years and 2 weeks. Anyway, I appreciate the questions. I appreciate the Twitch Primes and the bits, especially Chris Norton today. Thank you very much. So much donations. I hope I didn't miss any. He says he doesn't drive. I don't know how to respond to that, but thank you for the bits, Chris. And thank you all for tuning in. Hope you have an excellent rest of your day. Got some tech videos dropping for you in a couple hours. Take care, all. Have a good one. Bye-bye.